How you doing, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons, and I'm currently recording this video at roughly 3 a.m. Eastern, July 25th, after the Mets swept the New York Yankees for their season series. Check out my post-game coverage in case you haven't already. Thank you all so much in advance for that, but I'm coming at you with a late-night video that'll be posted later today, because I gotta let it loose. I gotta tell you, it's time, Mets fans. Let's get crazy. We're 5 games above 500. We're 1.5 games out behind the Atlanta Braves, heading into a 4-game set against Atlanta, in which I will be in attendance to Thursday's game. Look out for your boy, section 114, for the short schmuck. That is me, Wardy, and I'm here to tell you, the Metsies, it is time to lock in. Let's go all in this season. And what do I exactly mean by that? That is what I'm going to break down in today's show. But simply put, the Mets have been already in recent reports suggesting that they will be buying by the trade deadline, but to what degree is directly in hand with how they are rolling or not rolling heading into said deadline. With the Metsies playing baseball the way that they are playing right now, with the way that this team is really coming together, and you're getting Kodai Senga back in this rotation, I firmly believe the best has yet to come for this Mets team yet this season. So let's break down why they have a greater opportunity now than ever to make a splash at this year's trade deadline that might be just a little bit more than what you initially had in mind. So without further ado, let's let it rip, everybody. I want to know, how are you feeling with the Mets currently standing, again, 5 games above 500, securely in the second wildcard spot, currently a game and a half behind the Braves. All the Mets need is a series victory against Atlanta in this 4-game set, and just like that, they're on top of the Atlanta Braves, and now we're looking at the Phillies for the division. I mean, who says no at this point, right? And yes, I know you're going to say, Wardy, pump the brakes. What are we talking about here? I understand they've been playing good baseball lately, but this is still a Mets team that should not be investing big time come the trade deadline. And I'm here to tell you that that is a bunch of baloney for the following reasons. And this is, of course, is barring any drastic changes from now up until the next week when the trade deadline is here, that we'll be covering to an absolute T. But if the Mets say free fall, God forbid, over this next week, yes, that does throw a slight wrench into plans for the Mets and David Stearns, because as Andy Martino of SNY has noted, that while the current philosophy and viewpoint for David Stearns and Steve Cohen leading up to the trade deadline is to add, but only to a degree, mainly on the bullpen front, these things are ever changing. And should the Mets continue to roll and say, I don't know, win a series against the Atlanta Braves or at minimum split and go from there leading up to the trade deadline, you have to think David Stearns, Steve Cohen will not only reconsider their viewpoint and plans for the deadline, but actually heavily consider going more all in. And let me preface, when I say all in for David Stearns and Steve Cohen, that is not all in the sense of going out of your way to cut ties with a boatload of prospects for rental pieces. That is not going to happen no matter how much the Mets are all in or not. But what can and what will likely happen should the Mets continue to roll is to heavily consider bigger trade packages for controllable talent that'll help them beyond the 2024 season. And this is not just talking about the pitching front on bullpen and starting. We can also talk about offense. And I know you might be wondering, Wardy, how does that make sense when the Mets offense has quite literally been one of the best in Major League Baseball for the past 2+ months now? That might be true, but what is also true is the Mets have an outfield configuration with a less than reliable Starling Marte on the health front, a Tyrone Taylor that was great against Garrett Cole, but we know how up and down Tyrone can be, Harrison Bader day-to-day with injuries, the latest example as to why you can never have enough depth there. And there are a couple controllable bats that make a boatload of sense for the Mets should they go out of their way to try to consider to go all in this season while impacting the team for the better beyond the 2024 year. What kind of prospects would David Stearns consider to trade for these controllable talents? That's a great question as well. But what we know in the interim is that there are some huge names out there, headlined by some that we have talked about greatly on the channel. And no, I'm not just talking about the pitching today with Garrett Crochet, the best lefty starter in the game, arguably the best starter in the game with multiple years of control, a strikeout specialist, a ridiculous fastball. I love that man to an absolute T. The cutter is disgusting as well. Garrett Crochet would be amazing, but you're going to have to give up the entire farm for him. And I don't think the Mets have as many assets as, say, the Orioles or the Dodgers do, should they be willing to go all in there. But you got other assets from the White Sox and Tanner Banks, John John Brebbia on the bullpen front, which make a boatload of sense for them that we talked about in the past. Even Michael Kopech, who's a little bit more costly because he has more team control, has upside as a flamethrowing right-hander. Then you look at other teams like the Tampa Bay Rays. They'll be buying and selling when it comes to relievers. You got Fairbanks, you got Posh, guys that the Mets may consider for sure, guys that can definitely get the job done. Fairbanks and Posh, very different profiles. Posh is a southpaw option. Fairbanks is more of a short guarantee as, say, a setup option for Edwin Diaz, if you will. But the point is that there are some key bats out there, and let's talk about them especially because Luis Robert, Randy Arozarena, Jazz Chisholm, step right up and meet the Mets, baby. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jazz Chisholm, should the Mets get connected, we'll talk about it then. Until then, that is not something I foresee happening whatsoever. Jazz in the Division 1, a harder trade to pull. 2, the Mets right now, their second base situation between Jeff McNeil and Jose Iglesias is far from a bad one, given how Jeff has stepped up big time post All-Star break. Thank you, Daniel Murphy. If you know, you know. So I'm not expecting the Mets to do anything crazy over there. And even though Jazz has been playing the outfield the most of the season, he's not an outfielder. We know that. He's going to profile best in the infield in his career as things currently stand. And Jazz is a guy that I just don't see landing in Queens. I just simply don't see it. And if it does, awesome. We'll talk about it then. But a guy that, again, makes more sense here on the controllable offensive front is none other than Luis Robert. Because Luis Robert is, in my opinion, one of the best players in Major League Baseball. But the problem with Robert is it's about staying healthy, right? And as you guys have been watching the human highlight reel that is him, Robert in just 48 games this season, we're looking at 11 home runs, 23 RBIs, a 227, 300, 464 clip for a 111 WRC plus, which means Robert is 11% better than the average batter in baseball. However, what does Luis bring you? He brings you 12 stolen bags. This is a guy that's coming off of a fantastic 2023 campaign with 38 home runs, 90 runs scored, 80 RBIs, 20 stolen bags, a 264, 315, 542 clip for a 128 WRC plus, and a roughly 5 WAR. Luis Robert is already one of the best outfielders in all Major League Baseball when he's healthy and when he's right. He has a tremendous glove, as he was roughly a +9 per Fangraphs on their defensive metrics last season. This season, not so much because he's dealt with ailment and hasn't been as consistent. However, Robert, if you're going to go out of your way to try to acquire a controllable bat, a guy that can help your outfield configuration and your offense, there is no better option than Luis Robert. He is quite literally a human highlight reel. The exit velocity is ridiculous when he barrels baseballs. He steals bags like no tomorrow. He easily can be a 25 to 30 stolen bag base threat with the Mets here if they utilize his base running more, and if he can stay healthy, that's a big thing. But even for a guy who's had health issues in his young career in Robert, he's just 26 years of age, and he has team control for multiple years still. Again, this is not a guy that's going to be hitting the open market for multiple years right now. And because of that reason, that is the most exciting aspect to this. He's currently on a 6-year, $50 million contract. In 2026 and 2027, he does have club options, so bear that in mind, but that would be very beneficial for the Mets here. And again, if you're going to give up prospects, if you're going to give up top young talent, this is without question the guy you do it for. You know what this reminds me a lot of? This reminds me a lot of the New York Knicks going out of their way to officially require the final Nova Nick in Mikal Bridges, right? And while that trade happened, the Knicks gave up boatload first-round picks and a lot of talent there, but the reason why they did that, again, was because they finally had enough assets and are in a win-now stage to properly make that move. The Mets have a deep enough farm right now to warrant trading away some key assets, and I'll be frank, truthfully, the vast majority of prospects in the Mets farm are not going to sniff what Luis Robert is at his best in his MLB career. This guy has MVP caliber potential. We saw it just a year ago, and he's only going to continue to get better and age like a fine wine should he be able to stay on the field. That's where you enter the Mets here, and that is what is so enticing about the prospect of acquiring someone like him, and that's exactly why I not only hope but expect the Mets to be all in at this trade deadline, looking to at least consider these ideas to maybe get a Luis Robert and one of a Tanner Banks or a John Brebbia on the reliever front. Or if you want to go pitching, Eric Fetty. You guys know how I feel about Eric Fetty, one of the most slept on really sneaky starting pitching options leading up to the trade deadline, who has 2 years of control. David Stearns wanted him bad this past offseason. I'm sure he's going to want him again. Be on lookout for Eric Fetty that we talked about previously. Garrett Crochet is shooting for the stars, but that just feels so far-fetched. Luis Robert, I firmly believe, actually has a greater possibility of happening than Garrett Crochet based on the trade value alone right now and what these current markets are shaping up to be. But Robert, a lot to like there without question. Now let's talk about another outfield option, this time a bit more of a veteran who has not only playoff caliber experience, He stepped up big time. The World Baseball Classic, playoffs, World Series, you name it. Randy Arozarena. Randy, we love Randy. He's always stepping up. If you want a guy that can ball out big in the second half of the season, post-trade deadline, enter playoffs, this feels like the Yoenis Cespedes 2.0 type situation, should it actually happen. Because Randy is not having a great year this year. You know, he's on a one-year, $8 million contract, and he's not a free agent, however, until the 2027 offseason. So you're still getting team control for Randy, who has 15 home runs, 43 runs scored, 35 RBIs, 15 stolen bags, a 209, 315, 392 clip this season for a 108 WRC plus, 8% better than the average batter in baseball. Randy, you have him for team control for a couple of years. Yes, he has been on the decline with his regular season numbers each and every year when we look at it for the most part. However, Randy has stepped up huge and high leverage clutch situations. That's something this Mets lineup can certainly need should Pete Alonso be one of those guys that fluctuates a lot with a clutchness and high leverage factor throughout the course of the season. I know we got JD Martinez, we got Brandon Nimmo, we got Francisco Lindor, we got Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez. Man, I love this lineup. I really do. It's amazing to say. JDM's been in quite a rut. We all know that Brandon Nimmo is striking out more than it feels like I've ever seen him right now. Those things will change, but again, what helps keep things afloat is by having as lethal of a lineup as possible, and one of a Luis Robert or Randy Arozarena, who again, coming off of a 23 home run, 95 runs scored, 83 RBI, 22 stolen bags season with a 254, 364, 425 clip for a 126 WRC plus, 26% better than the average batter in baseball. You can't go wrong there. And if the Mets had, say, a hot corner problem right now, say Mark Vientos didn't blossom, and say Brett Beatty was not the guy still, then I'd say go after Isaac Paredes as well. However, the Mets don't need to do that, thankfully. But Randy Arozarena, again, a playoff caliber performer, a guy that knows when to step up in the big moment. He would be electric. It's not going to cost you nearly as much as a Luis Robert will, for example, yet you're going to get immediate power production. Yes, you're going to get swing and miss, but it changes scenery on an exciting Metropolitan team versus a depleted Rays right now. I think would definitely do wonders for a guy like Randy Arozarena, who's all about the vibes and is all about winning, which is what we love to see. Final remarks I have for you all, folks, is again, do not be surprised when the Mets make trades, just a matter of to what degree right now. There are multiple amazing trade partner opportunities between the White Sox, the Rays. There are a lot of teams that I think make a lot of sense for this Mets team right now, but there are a few that I think check off the boxes of really everything that they can need. The Rays enter that category, the White Sox enter that category, a couple other clubs out there, but they stick out like an absolute sore thumb for a good reason, I should say. So Mets fans, on the topic of trying to acquire talent that will help you beyond the 2024 season, how willing are you when it comes to trading away prospect talent to make that happen? And secondly, how likely or unlikely do you believe it is for the Mets to go all in at the trade deadline? Again, this is not about giving up prospects for a bunch of rental options. It's about giving up prospects for controllable talent in package deals. Again, if you're going to acquire a Jesse Winker, I would love that from the Nationals, but one, Mike Rizzo has to not be stubborn trading within the division, and two, David Stearns has to not be stubborn to trade away young, controllable talent for a rental piece. That's exactly why it may not happen. But what might happen is the Mets going big before it is too late leading up to the trade deadline. So be on the lookout for it all, folks. We're going to cover it to an absolute T. I have had enough. Your boy Wardy wants to see the boys go all in the best way possible to help them now and the years going forward. I want to know how you amazing Mets fans feel about this thought process and the potential of the Mets making a blockbuster splash by the trade deadline. Drop your thoughts and initial reactions down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned as I will be live later today at the time of you watching this, exiting Citi Field, hopefully after a Mets team win against the Atlanta Braves in game 1 of a 4-game set. Post-game coverage every single day, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, to an absolute T here on WardyNYM. Thank you all so much again, and as always, let's go Mets. Peace out, folks. Have a great one.